Dear students, good morning. Let us start the discussion on today's newspaper, the 7th March 2018. The first article, Make the Neighborhood First Again. So, the Neighborhood First policy, it was mooted by the Prime Minister Modi. In this context, how we deviated from this policy, how India's influence is decreasing in the region, and how to regain it back. These are the elements of this particular article. Why India's influence is decreasing in this region. The first thing is, India started this hard diplomacy, the big brotherly attitude. You can clearly see this against Maldives and Nepal in the recent context. So Nepal, when it framed its constitution, India did not welcome it, and Madhesi agitation finally led India to impose a blockade on the goods flowing from Indian side towards Nepal. You know, Nepal is a landlocked country. Being a landlocked country, it has suffered a huge, especially during the festival season. And KP Sharma Oli government then moved close to China, and it has made a trade and transit agreement with China. And infrastructure connectivity with China is in a full swing with Nepal now. Coming to Maldives, in 2015, Prime Minister Modi was supposed to visit Maldives and his trip got cancelled. Maldives is only the country which he did not visit in the neighborhood till now. And second, when emergency was imposed, India sent a strong worded letter to Maldives and Maldives responded by not participating in Milan exercises, the naval exercises. And the next is the China factor. So if you take the China factor, previously China did not have much of interest in South Asia. Now it has many strategic assets in South Asia. So it wants to interfere with the internal politics in South Asia so that it can protect its strategic assets. Now it is willing to mediate in Afghanistan. It has offered itself to mediate between Bangladesh and Myanmar on Rohingya crisis. Now it is also offering itself to end the stalemate in Maldives. So strategically, this position has to be taken by India. Because of cultural proximity with these countries or because of its position in the neighborhood, India could have been better performed with this. But India moved away from that position and it shows that it is ineffective, now it is partisan, etc. And the third thing is circumstances. Now if you see, most of the South Asian countries, they are going for elections in the next 2 years. Either it is Sri Lanka, Bhutan, and recently the Nepal elections are also being conducted. So, few of these countries, if you take Nepal as an example, anti-Indianism is projected as a Nepali nationalism. So, this way of divisive projection or anti-Indian projection is deteriorating the situation further. Previously, these countries used to meet regularly and share their opinions. So in this context, the SAARC has played an important role. But the SAARC process has come to a grinding halt because of India-Pakistan rivalry. And you know, the South Asian region is the least integrated region in the world. And the second, the South Asian region is also the poorest region in the world. So free trade and free dialogue among the South Asian nations can improve the relations further. What India shall do to change this situation? The first is, India shall believe or realize that the soft diplomacy is its strength. So improving goodwill diplomacy, developmental aid to the smaller countries will always be helpful. How India was able to gain goodwill in Afghanistan because of its developmental work, not because of defense cooperation. So India need to go back to the drawing table to redraft its soft diplomacy. And second, the SAARC need to be revived. So how the SAARC has to be revived? ASEAN is the best example. Now, ASEAN leaders have suggested this. SAARC leaders need to meet more informally, develop good rapport with each other. And second, the smaller nations have to be given an opportunity to lead rather than India playing the central role. So this is what Indonesia did in ASEAN, which India is expected to do in SAARC. Third is the China and the relations of the smaller countries with China need to be taken with a broader mind. Now, China is offering many economic goals and infrastructure goals for these countries. So, India, rather than openly criticizing and distancing these countries, need to rationally and logically look at these projects. If Indian interests are getting worst affected, then India can propose it to China or can have a direct talk with China rather than arm twisting with these smaller countries. These are the things which we can recommend for. After the Tripura setback, the loss of power for left in the West Bengal and in Tripura is entirely different. In the West Bengal, there is a continuous struggle of Trinamool Congress and also slow loss of the elections. First is in this Panchayat elections, slowly the state is being lost. So it is gradual. But in Tripura, it is sudden. So what it indicates to the left politics? Even today, the left sees Indian society as a class society. But if you clearly observe, few days back there was an interview of a historian. What he says is the class divisions are no more real in a networked society. And Indian society, if you take into context, the middle class is growing. And this middle class is aspirational. It wants more jobs, better livelihood. And second, the nature of employment itself has changed. More and more service sector has come into existence. The third and most important aspect is the left politics and their mobilization tactics are losing significance. These are old tactics to mobilize the people. The modern tactics are not getting definite ground or definite place among the left parties. These are all making them to lose the significance on ground. Another important development is strengthening of identity politics. Now the people are attached to their identities, primordial identities like tribal identities, caste identities, like never before. So the class identity and caste identities, they are not co-equal in India at all. So in this region, the left sees the society more as a class division, but identity-based division is still prominent in India, which the left is not agreeing to the fact. So in this context, if the left has to become relevant, it means that it has to take or it has to change its ways of struggle, ways of mobilization of the people, understand the social reality in India. That's what this article states about. The next is sharp correction. It is about stock exchange fall in India. The Sensex, the Bombay Stock Exchange Sensex, Nifty of National Stock Exchange, these are fast falling. What are the reasons? Remember that Indian stock exchanges are always away from the fundamentals of the corporate houses. The stock prices and corporate earnings, they do not match in India. So, one way we see a twin balance sheet problem in the country where corporates do not have proper profits. On the other side, you see their shares going up. That shows the dissonance between these two. And second aspect is the protectionist measures are increasing across the world. You already know that the Trump, he has announced for imposing duties on steel and aluminium. Third, the economic recovery across the world is going to change the monetary policy stance of the countries. It means that interest rates are bound to increase. As interest rates increase, the investments will move away from the stock exchanges towards the bond markets. So, these are the reasons. And India specific another reason is the bank sector is not doing well as expected. So, these are the reasons why the stock market is falling. So, the fundamentals need to be corrected in India. That's what we can state it as. This article is not important to us. And it's time to have a debate on proportional representation, the most important article for the day. So this topic sits right into electoral reforms. Already there is a question last year. And representation of People's Act, you can connect this article to. So what are the various issues discussed? So the first is Government of India released the electoral bonds. So how far these electoral bonds can be effective to streamline the elections in India? One advantage of this is the cash will be replaced by official transaction. But what will happen to transparency? So most of the political parties are not willing to disclose their donors. So transparency is essential to keep the people informed and to make them the right choices. But this election bonds or electoral bonds, they are going to kill the transparency in electoral financing, because the name of the donor is not disclosed either to the party or to the government or anywhere. But government can arm twist the banks to get the names of these donors. Here, remember, the major reason why secrecy has to be maintained, there are two things which the donors say. They don't want other political parties to poach them. And the second is, they don't want the political parties taking revenge against them. So, avoid this. The secrecy has to be maintained. That's how it has been stated as. But however, remember, the transparency is a virtue to decrease the electoral corruption. The second is, with regard to proportional representation, what is been stated is this. India has chosen for the first past the post system. What is first past the post system and proportional representation system? I have already explained in the NCERT polity textbooks. So in the first past the post system, it is simple system, and also you have a representative at the constituency level. Proportional representation, though, is complex. It provides representation to every social group in Indian politics. So, if you take BSP in last UP elections, it has got 20% of the vote share with zero representation in the Legislative Assembly. These anomalies can be avoided. But what is the proportional representation's tragedy is it encourages instability. Every identity group will form a political party of its own, and that leads to instability. And the social divisions are further expected to be increased with proportional representation. But what the S.Y. Qureshi suggests is, India can have a Germany model which is a mix of first past the post system and proportional representation system. And third is, with regard to appointment of the election commissioners, if you take Chief Information Commissioner and the CVC, these are appointed by a collegium. The constitutional functionaries like CAG and Chief Election Commissioner, these are appointed by the President of India. And you also know the Tarkunde Committee has recommended for collegium to appoint the Chief Election Commissioner and the other election commissioners. He also supports the same arguments. And on the EVMs, he says the dispute is unwarranted and they have proven to be right for every election. And by adding the VVPATs, then we can expect more transparency, voter verifiable paper audit trail. And the next is cap on donations to the political parties from corporates. Previously, there was the cap of 7.5% on the profits earned by a business entity to donate to the political parties. But the 7.5% cap is removed now. Previously, a company shall have a minimum establishment of 3 years to start donating to the political party. So all these restrictions are being removed. So he expresses a fear that it will ultimately leading to the business capturing the politics. Quid pro quo. It means the business houses can officially donate the political parties and can gain the policy favors from the political parties which are in power. And state funding of elections. What he says is state funding of elections is difficult to monitor. So state funding of political parties is easy to monitor. So rather than state funding of elections, let us talk about state funding of political parties. That's how he puts it as. So these are the opinions expressed by former Chief Election Commissioner S.Y. Qureshi. And Sri Lanka declares a state of emergency amid violence. There was violence against minorities, that is Muslims, in Sri Lanka from hardline Buddhists. This has led to the declaration of emergency over there. North Korea ready for talks with the US. Remember here, the North Korea is majorly apprehensive of two things. One is a regime change, and the second thing is an internal civil war. So North Korea, it has engaged with United States of America during the Bush era and during Clinton era. They have promised to give her the nuclear reactors and lift the economic sanctions against the country. But however, whatever the promises made by the Clinton era are moved back, are not being honored by the Bush era. Because of this, the North Korea has become skeptical on the US motives. So lack of consistency in the US action and declaring the North Korea as part of the axis of evil finally hardened the stand of North Korea. And after Arab Spring, there is every reason for the North Korea to believe that the United States can or bring in a rebellion in North Korea too. So now, probably some promises might have come to North Korea from South Korea that there is no danger to the regime, and in return it has to give a promise on denuclearization of Korean Peninsula. Probably this might have led to talks between North Korea and the United States of America. So this is where we stand on this topic. In the last page, I gave you the notes that will be available to you from laix.in/CivilsPrep. Now, we are starting a prelims program tentatively from 19th of March. So every day there will be a class video. After the class video, a question paper will be given by the evening on those topics, and you are expected to answer this question paper. So class video followed by a question paper. So this is how we are going to conduct this particular program. So either to give it for free or to give it for money, we haven't decided. If we charge, we don't believe in giving for free. If we charge a bit of minimum price to it. And second, the polity NCRT videos are being uploaded on laix.in/testprep. You can take a look onto them. So there will be a minimal price which will be kept on this particular videos. Thank you very much and all the best.